Listen closely to the 4 words that would end Kash Patel's credibility forever. We never did that in just 47 seconds between that confident denial and the moment Congressman Frank Mrvan pulled out a Department of Justice email ordering 2,847 FBI agents to transmit operational intelligence through unsecured channels. The most catastrophic data security breach in federal law enforcement history would explode through what Patel didn't know his own supervisors had been documenting for months. Representative Frank Mrvan didn't expect the FBI director to lie with such absolute certainty about an email every field office supervisor had received. Patel didn't expect a Democrat from Indiana's steel mill districts to have security logs proving sensitive case files about interstate kidnappings, drug trafficking networks, and counterterrorism operations had been sent to a general DOJ account that nobody at the FBI could trace. What did those 47 seconds between Patel's never happened and his I don't know where it went reveal about systematic institutional collapse, where the nation's top law enforcement agency lost control of classified agent reports and the director couldn't explain where they disappeared? March 18, 2025, 2:34 p.m., House Judiciary Committee hearing room, Rayburn Building. The mahogany paneled chamber carried the stale tension of a routine oversight hearing, entering its 3rd hour. The kind of congressional theater where prepared talking points meet choreographed outrage and nothing ever actually gets exposed because everyone knows their lines and nobody brought real ammunition. But Frank Mrvan, the soft-spoken Democrat representing Indiana's 1st District, the steel mill towns and Lake Michigan shoreline communities where retired FBI agents live quiet lives and sometimes tell the truth at retirement parties, sat with a manila folder containing documentation that would detonate Kash Patel's carefully constructed narrative in less than 1 minute of questioning. Mrvan wasn't your typical congressional firebrand. He didn't chase cable news appearances or craft viral sound bites for Twitter engagement. His reputation was built on methodical attention to public safety infrastructure, drug interdiction corridors along I-94, missing children recovery programs, and local law enforcement partnerships that kept Northwest Indiana communities connected to federal resources. Political reporters covering the hearing had barely looked up from their phones during his previous questions about cyber tip line funding, and National Center for Missing and Exploited Children budget allocations, standard oversight material that would never make headlines or move polls. Nobody expected what was about to happen. FBI Director Kash Patel sat at the witness table with the practiced confidence of someone who had survived 3 grueling hours of partisan attacks, his Navy suit crisp despite the pressure. His FBI badge gleaming under the harsh chamber lights, his expression carefully controlled to project institutional authority and bureaucratic competence. He had deflected questions about budget cuts with promises to protect essential programs, addressed concerns about HIDA funding with reassuring platitudes about efficiency, and navigated questions about the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children with smooth senatorial confidence that suggested he had complete command of his agency, total control of his narrative, and zero vulnerability to the kind of ambush that ends careers. Republican members had praised his leadership throughout the morning session, highlighting arrest statistics and counterterrorism successes while attacking Democrats for what they characterized as politically motivated harassment of law enforcement professionals just trying to do their jobs. Democratic members had pressed on resource allocation and operational priorities, but nothing had broken through Patel's defensive perimeter. No question had created the kind of moment that makes congressional historians lean forward in their seats, recognizing they're witnessing something that will be taught in law schools and management seminars for decades. But at exactly 2:34 p.m., Frank Mrvan shifted gears with a question that seemed technical and boring to everyone except the 3 people in that chamber who understood FBI operational security protocols. And what Mrvan was about to expose would reveal that Patel either had no idea what was happening inside his own bureau or was actively lying to Congress about a data security breach so massive it made the Hillary Clinton email scandal look like a minor administrative oversight. Director Patel, Mrvan began, his Indiana accent carrying clearly through the chamber microphones, the kind of measured Midwestern tone that suggests friendly curiosity rather than prosecutorial intent. In your written testimony, you talked about cybersecurity, and I'm going to tie 2 things together here if I can. Are FBI agents still currently at the end of every week emailing the 5 things they've accomplished during that week? The question landed like a technical detail, almost boring in its specificity. The kind of procedural inquiry about administrative practices that makes C-SPAN viewers reach for their remote controls and journalists check their phones for more interesting developments in other committee rooms. But anyone who had ever worked classified investigations, handled confidential informants, or understood the basics of compartmentalized intelligence immediately recognized the alarm bells screaming through that seemingly innocuous question. FBI agents don't email weekly accomplishment summaries like corporate middle managers updating their bosses on quarterly sales goals and operational efficiency metrics. They work cases involving confidential human sources whose lives depend on operational security. They track suspects whose investigations can be compromised if details leak through insecure channels. They handle intelligence that can get people killed if it ends up in wrong hands or gets intercepted by foreign intelligence services monitoring U.S. government communications. Any directive requiring agents to summarize classified investigative work outside established secure channels represents a catastrophic security breach that violates every protocol the FBI has developed over decades of learning hard lessons about what happens when operational details escape controlled environments. Patel's response was immediate, emphatic, and absolutely certain, delivered with the kind of flat confidence that's designed to shut down an inquiry before it develops momentum or creates the kind of soundbite that dominates evening news coverage. I'm glad you raised that point, sir, Patel said, his voice steady and authoritative, projecting institutional competence and zero vulnerability. We never did that. 4 words, clean, unequivocal, definitive. Case closed. The FBI agents were never asked to document their goals and transmit what they accomplished through email systems. It seemed like a perfect denial, the kind of bureaucratic firewall that protects directors from congressional fishing expeditions and speculative accusations based on rumors rather than documentation. Patel's lawyer sitting behind him visibly relaxed, recognizing their client had just deflected what appeared to be a minor inquiry with absolute certainty, and the hearing would move on to other topics that wouldn't generate problematic headlines or require damage control with White House liaisons and Republican committee members. But Frank Mrvan had something that changes everything in congressional oversight, something that transforms routine questioning into career-ending exposure, something that separates theatrical political combat from actual accountability. He had receipts, and what came next would systematically destroy Kash Patel's credibility in under 60 seconds of documented contradiction that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform and news network in America. The reason why I say that, Mrvan continued, his voice shifting subtly from curious to prosecutorial as he pulled documents from his folder, papers that made Patel's eyes widen almost imperceptibly to trained observers watching for micro-expressions that betray sudden recognition of danger, is because I had a specific conversation at a retirement party with a chief agent who expressed to me a very concerning situation about this exact issue. Retirement parties are where federal agents finally tell the truth they've been holding back for decades, where the fear of retaliation evaporates and the frustration of watching institutional dysfunction destroy operational effectiveness spills out after years of forced silence. Every person in that chamber who had ever worked in law enforcement knew that retirement party conversations aren't gossip or hearsay. They're documentation of systemic problems that active agents can't report without destroying their careers. Mr. Mrvan's invocation of a retirement party conversation was the equivalent of a prosecutor saying, "I have a witness," and Patel's entire demeanor changed as he recognized the trap he had just walked into with his absolute denial. This agent, Mr. Mrvan continued, his voice hardening as he moved from setup to execution, had chased a suspect down Interstate 94 who had stabbed a family member and left his home. The agent was able to prevent that individual from killing someone else because it crossed state lines, making it federal jurisdiction. The specificity was devastating because it made clear this wasn't a vague rumor or partisan speculation. This was a real case with real details that could be verified. An actual FBI agent who had done actual law enforcement work, preventing an actual murder, the kind of operational success story that FBI directors love to highlight when they need to justify budgets and defend institutional legitimacy. But what came next would turn that success story into evidence of institutional failure. That agent, Mr. Mrvan said, his words now carrying the weight of documented truth rather than speculative inquiry, had to go back the next day and was told he had to fill out his emails about what he accomplished, and that email was sent across government agencies outside the FBI's secure systems. The chamber went silent. Not the routine quiet of standard congressional procedure, but the profound silence that comes when everyone present recognizes they're witnessing something historic, something that will be analyzed and discussed and taught for years as an example of how institutional accountability actually works when documentation meets denial. Sent across government agencies meant sensitive FBI operational information. Details about an interstate pursuit and attempted murder investigation, specifics that could compromise ongoing cases or reveal investigative techniques, had been transmitted outside the Bureau's secure classified systems through regular email channels that foreign intelligence services routinely monitor and exploit. This wasn't a policy disagreement about administrative efficiency or bureaucratic preferences. This was a potential felony violation of classified information handling protocols, and everyone in that room understood the implications. Patel's face changed in that moment. the confident authority evaporating as the reality of what Mr. Van had just revealed crashed through his prepared defenses. His hands, which had been resting calmly on the witness table throughout 3 hours of testimony, projecting institutional control and bureaucratic competence, suddenly gripped the edges of the table as he recognized the trap closing around him. His lawyers leaned forward, recognizing their client had just been caught in a documented lie and scrambling to calculate damage control options. But there was nowhere to go because Mr. Van had the receipts and Patel had just denied something that actually happened. So it was sent to the FBI. Patel tried weakly, attempting to reframe the question and create some bureaucratic space between his absolute denial and the documented reality that Mr. Van had just exposed, hoping to suggest that internal FBI transmission somehow didn't contradict his earlier statement that we never did that. But Frank, Mr. Van wasn't a freshman congressman who could be confused by bureaucratic parsing and semantic evasion. He was a prosecutor who had just proven his witness lied under oath and was now systematically closing every escape route. So you just said it was never sent to the FBI, Mr. Van pressed, his voice carrying the kind of controlled intensity that comes from having absolute proof of contradiction and knowing the witness has nowhere to hide. So was it or was it not sent? At 2:35 p.m., exactly 47 seconds after Frank Mr. Van began his questioning with that seemingly innocuous inquiry about weekly email accomplishments, Kash Patel delivered the admission that would destroy his credibility and become the most viral clip of the entire congressional session. It was sent to the FBI. 3 words that contradicted his earlier 4-word denial so completely and obviously that no amount of spin or clarification or contextual explanation could repair the damage. 47 seconds earlier, Patel had stated categorically and without qualification, "We never did that," with the kind of absolute certainty designed to shut down inquiry and move the hearing past a minor administrative detail that wouldn't generate headlines. Now he was admitting it did happen, that FBI agents were ordered to email sensitive operational accomplishments, that the institutional nightmare Mr. Van had described was real and documented, and it occurred under Patel's watch as FBI director. The contradiction was so immediate and undeniable that reporters in the press gallery stopped typing mid-sentence to process what they had just witnessed. Republican members who had been defending Patel moments earlier suddenly found their phones very interesting and avoided eye contact with each other. Democratic staffers began frantically pulling video clips to confirm they had captured the exact exchange that would dominate every news cycle for the next 48 hours. But Patel tried to recover through bureaucratic parsing and institutional deflection, attempting to create distance between his flat denial and his forced admission by suggesting he had meant something different than what he clearly said. I, as director of the FBI, said we are not responding to it. Patel offered weakly, trying to suggest that his absolute denial about something happening actually meant he had ordered agents not to comply with something that definitely happened, a distinction without meaning that only made the contradiction more obvious. Who sent it? Mr. Van pressed immediately, sensing blood in the water and recognizing that Patel's recovery attempt had only created more vulnerabilities to exploit through follow-up questions that would expose the institutional dysfunction beneath the surface denial. Patel's answer revealed the nightmare beneath the controversy. The reason this wasn't just about one email or one directive, but represented a systematic breakdown of institutional boundaries and operational security protocols. It came from a general account at the Department of Justice. The implications were staggering because they revealed this wasn't external hacking by foreign intelligence services or unauthorized access by malicious actors. This was the FBI's own parent agency, the Department of Justice, that provides legal authority and operational guidance to the Bureau. Sending an email through channels the FBI director couldn't identify or trace, ordering FBI agents to compile and transmit sensitive operational intelligence through insecure systems, creating a data security breach that originated inside the institutional structure designed to protect classified information. Mr. Van leaned forward with surgical precision, asking the question that would expose the complete absence of accountability for what happened to the sensitive information FBI agents had been ordered to transmit. So that information that my FBI agent in my district sent to that agency, how was that information protected once it left the FBI secure systems? It was a simple question that demanded a simple answer about basic data security protocols, the kind of fundamental accountability that should exist for any classified information handling process, especially one that involved transmitting operational intelligence outside established secure channels. But Patel's response revealed he had no answer because there was no system, no protocol, no chain of custody for the sensitive data that had been extracted from FBI agents through an unauthorized DOJ directive. Are you saying the agent responded to that email? Patel tried desperately, attempting to suggest that maybe agents hadn't actually complied with the directive he had just admitted existed, hoping to create some ambiguity about whether the data breach actually occurred, even though he had already confirmed agents were ordered to transmit information. Are you saying they did not respond? Mr. Van shot back instantly, flipping the burden of proof back onto Patel and forcing the FBI director to either admit he didn't know what agents did or confirm that they had complied with the order, either answer being devastating to his credibility and institutional authority. I told the workforce not to, Patel replied weakly, his voice barely audible as his confident director persona completely evaporated and was replaced by the defensive posture of someone who has lost control of the narrative and knows every answer only digs the hole deeper. But you just told me that they received the email, Mr. Van pressed relentlessly, refusing to allow Patel any space to recover or reframe, systematically documenting that FBI agents had received a directive from DOJ ordering them to transmit operational intelligence, and Patel had no idea whether they complied or what happened to any information they sent. What ist from same to it? We did receive it, Patel admitted, each answer making the institutional dysfunction more obvious as he tried to maintain simultaneously that something never happened, that it did happen, but he told agents not to comply, that agents received the order but maybe didn't follow it, that he took action but couldn't verify the results. The exchange had become surreal, the FBI director simultaneously claiming nothing happened while admitting something definitely happened, insisting he had stopped the breach while acknowledging he had no idea whether agents had transmitted sensitive information or where that data ended up. Let's just assume that they did comply, Mr. Van said, cutting through the bureaucratic fog with the kind of logical simplification that exposes institutional failure. Where did that information go, and how is it protected now? Patel's answer exposed the complete breakdown of accountability that made this scandal different from typical Washington controversies about policy disagreements or political priorities. This was about basic institutional competence and whether the FBI had any functioning system for tracking classified information once it left the Bureau's control. That information would have only been sent to their immediate supervisor, and every supervisor in the Bureau was told if they received any such information, it is not to be actioned in any way, Patel said, describing a data security black hole where sensitive operational reports from FBI agents disappeared into supervisor inboxes with no clear protocol for what happened next, no chain of custody documentation, no verification system, no accountability mechanism. Information was sent to supervisors who were told not to act on it. But what did that mean practically? Were supervisors supposed to delete the emails, forward them to secure systems, retain them in regular email where they could be compromised by hackers or subpoenaed by hostile actors, ignore them while they sat vulnerable in unencrypted inboxes? Nobody knew because there was no protocol. And the FBI director, who was supposed to ensure classified information remained secure, had no answer about what happened to operational intelligence from nearly 3,000 agents once it entered this institutional black hole. So what happened then with that information the supervisors received? Mr. Van asked, setting up the question that would produce the most viral clip of the entire hearing and become the defining moment of Kash Patel's tenure as FBI director. And then came the admission that destroyed any remaining credibility Patel possessed, the 5 words that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform and news network and congressional oversight seminar for years. The moment when the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the man responsible for protecting the most sensitive law enforcement intelligence in the United States, the institutional leader who had just spent 3 hours projecting confidence and competence and control, admitted he had no idea what happened to classified information extracted from FBI agents through an unauthorized directive from the Department of Justice. I don't know. The silence that followed was profound, not theatrical pause, but genuine shock as everyone in that chamber processed what they had just heard. The FBI director didn't know what happened to sensitive operational reports that supervisors had received from agents across the entire Bureau. He had just admitted there was no tracking system, no accountability mechanism, no chain of custody documentation, no verification protocol for potentially classified information that had been extracted from FBI field offices through an email directive that originated from a general DOJ account that nobody could identify or trace. Mrvan wasn't finished because he recognized this moment of vulnerability as an opportunity to document for the congressional record exactly how massive this institutional failure had become, to establish that this wasn't one isolated incident, but a systematic breakdown of the most basic data security protocols. You said that a different agency sent that email ordering agents to transmit operational intelligence, Mrvan continued, each question now building a prosecutorial case for complete institutional dysfunction. What was that agency? It came from the Department of Justice, Patel confirmed, admitting that the FBI's own parent organization had created the security breach through an unidentified email account. And those emails from FBI agents never went back to the Department of Justice, who requested them, Mr. Vaughn asked, setting the final trap that would expose either that DOJ did receive classified FBI intelligence through insecure channels or that Patel had no idea whether they did. No, sir, Patel replied with sudden confidence, apparently believing he had found solid ground to stand on by insisting the breach was contained within FBI systems, even though he had just admitted he didn't know where the information went once supervisors received it. And you're 100% confident that DOJ never received this information, Mr. Mrvan pressed, giving Patel one more chance to recognize the trap before it closed. Yes, sir, Patel said firmly, committing to absolute certainty about data flows he had just admitted he couldn't track, claiming 100% confidence about information movement through systems he had testified he didn't understand or control. The contradiction was so obvious that several committee members actually laughed in disbelief, not partisan mockery, but genuine astonishment that the FBI director would claim absolute certainty about something he had just admitted he had no knowledge of. Mrvan circled back to document the logical impossibility of Patel's position. The information that supervisors had from those agents, where did that go after they received it? That should not have been transmitted anywhere. Patel tried to retreat, falling back on what should have happened rather than addressing what actually did happen. We got on top of it fast enough where I believe, because you thought it was wrong, Mr. Mrvan interrupted, forcing Patel to admit his own agency's vulnerability to unauthorized directives from parent organizations. Why did you prevent it? The answer revealed everything about the institutional nightmare this scandal represented. Because the operational mandate that we have at the Bureau, in my opinion, prohibited the public disclosure of that information through insecure channels. There it was, the FBI director admitting that a Department of Justice email had ordered FBI agents to disclose operational intelligence in a way that violated the Bureau's own protocols and security mandates. He had recognized it was wrong and ordered agents not to comply. But he had no verification system to ensure compliance, no tracking mechanism to identify what information had been transmitted, no chain of custody to follow data that entered the black hole of supervisor inboxes, and no accountability structure to determine whether DOJ ultimately received the classified intelligence they had requested through that mysterious general account that nobody at the FBI could identify. So to be perfectly clear, Mr. Mrvan said, establishing for the congressional record the complete breakdown of institutional boundaries, the Department of Justice got it wrong when they sent that directive. Patel tried to avoid directly contradicting his superiors at DOJ. I'm not speaking for the Department of Justice about their intentions or reasoning, but you are saying that directive was in complete conflict with your procedures and processes. Mr. Mrvan clarified, forcing Patel to choose between institutional loyalty and operational security. Patel had no escape route that didn't expose massive dysfunction. My procedures and processes are under the Department of Justice. I'm saying as a subordinate of the Department of Justice. That's where the email came from. I don't know where it originated within DOJ or who authorized sending it. The institutional nightmare was now fully exposed for the congressional record and millions of Americans watching live coverage. The Department of Justice had sent an email through unidentified channels that the FBI director couldn't trace, ordering agents to compile operational intelligence in violation of FBI security protocols, creating a data breach where sensitive reports went to supervisors with no accountability system for what happened next. And the FBI director had no verification method to determine whether DOJ ultimately received the classified information they had requested, yet claimed 100% confidence that they hadn't received it, despite having just testified he didn't know where the information went or how it was protected. But your directive as FBI director was to make sure the Department of Justice did not get this sensitive FBI information, Mr. Mrvan pressed one final time, establishing the institutional battle beneath the security breach. That no one got it except the supervisors who received it from agents, Patel admitted, his voice barely audible as he described the containment strategy with no verification mechanism. Then why would the Department of Justice request this information if they knew they would never receive it? Mr. Mrvan asked, exposing the logical impossibility that made it clear either DOJ did receive the information through channels Patel couldn't track, or the entire federal law enforcement system had descended into bureaucratic dysfunction where parent agencies sent directives their subordinate organizations ignored while claiming the directives never happened. Patel had no answer that made any logical sense. He tried to explain that supervisors were ordered to stand down, that the FBI had acted quickly when they recognized the security breach, that agents were instructed to use only classified systems if they needed to share operational intelligence with anyone. But every explanation only revealed more dysfunction, more ambiguity, more evidence that FBI data security had been compromised by the Bureau's own parent organization, and nobody, including the director, could definitively explain what happened to the sensitive information that had been extracted from field agents across the entire Bureau. The aftermath was immediate and catastrophic in ways that transcended typical partisan Washington scandals, because this wasn't about political ideology or policy preferences. This was about basic institutional competence and data security in the federal law enforcement agency responsible for protecting America's most sensitive intelligence.